Welcome to Wiley Trade Podcast, making trade inclusive for all Americans. I'm your host, Derick Holt, a partner in Wiley's International Trade Practice Group. Join us as we delve into the intricacies of international trade, policy, and the role of advocacy in supporting U.S. companies. Today, I am excited to introduce Michelle Perrin-Steinberg, the Chief Export Control / Sanctions Legal Counsel for SAP in North and South America. Michelle is at the forefront of ensuring compliance with trade laws and market requirements, working closely with SAP's cloud business groups and other functional teams. Michelle is an expert in international trade compliance with more than 18 years of experience in various sectors. Prior to SAP, she played a significant role in Deloitte's Global Trade Advisory Practice Group and has offered strategic regulatory trade control guidance in aerospace and the defense industry. Michelle is also an advisory board member for Women, Influence, and Power in Law, and also an executive board member of the Syracuse Law Alumni Association. Michelle's insights and leadership have been instrumental in shaping export control and trade sanctions compliance policies, and her extensive background makes her a valuable voice in the discussions about the future of international trade. Welcome, Michelle, to Wiley Trade Podcast.
Thank you so much, Derick. I'm so excited to be here with you and your team. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to jump right into it. So with 18 years of experience in international trade compliance, you've worked in various sectors such as higher education and the Big Four. Can you share with us how this background has shaped your approach to your current role as SAP's Chief Export Control / Sanctions Legal Counsel?
Yes, I'd be happy to. I also want to first start off by saying that, all of my comments here are my personal views and experiences and don't represent any of my current or previous employers. But you're right. I have been in this business for a long time. And I think what makes me unique is that I have experienced this practice area in various sectors, right? I haven't really come across other attorneys like me who have been in so many different spaces. And I consider myself to be very fortunate. And what this has given me is the depth and breadth of practical experience. And all of those experiences together I bring to my current role. And if you can just allow me just to walk through, some of these experiences that I've had, I started out in aerospace and defense, working in a business unit level, doing the practical day-to-day work of licensing in this space, right? So it was grueling work, but it was great experience because it was writing the actual licenses, submitting them in the government submission tool. So I know what that's like, right? Yeah. And then I moved to Boeing, and there it was more of a compliance role. It was more looking into potential violations of non-compliance. What does that look like? Do we have any gaps in our program? Putting in place corrective actions. So different kind of a role, right, than the day-to-day stuff. So I took the experiences that I had, supporting the programs now to see like what happens if, you have a potential escape. After Boeing, I decided to go into higher education. And that was completely different from the aerospace and defense world because I was basically a office of one, like okay. I didn't have a team, of colleagues that I could count on. And so it was quite different. And it was a real learning experience for me. Most of my time there was spent explaining to a university community how export controls and trade sanctions apply in their space. So it was a lot of enablement. And I didn't really get, make a lot of friends in the beginning because people just didn't really understand, how this applies to them. But I think what it is that it's a relationship building. You have to be, a relationship builder. And that's what I took on. And also that role helped me get exposure to sanctions because previous to the higher education role, when I was in aerospace and defense, it didn't really work so much with sanctions. So working at the university, it was a major research university in Florida, in Miami. And so at that time, there was a lot of changes to the Cuban Asset Control Regulation. And so I had to really keep up to speed with that. And I also got the chance to submit my first ever OFAC license for a research cruise boat in international waters. Just stuff that I just would never experience, in aerospace and defense. And so I really value that experience there. Also really putting together a program, writing policies and procedures. procedures, and bringing on automation tools, screening automation tools for the university that they didn't have before. So all of that, experience was at that university. And then after there, I decided to try out what it was like to work at a law firm. I had never worked at a law firm before, and I really felt like I wanted to experience what it was like being on the other side of all this in-house experience, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, law firm life, that is serious. So I'm so glad though that I had that experience, supporting clients on the other side, what that
Yeah.
was like. And what I took away from that experience was I really enjoy supporting clients. And so I knew I wanted to continue to do that, but in a different space. And so that's why I joined Deloitte. And at
Okay.
Deloitte, in consulting, I was able to support clients all shapes and sizes, domestic, international. I really traveled the globe with Deloitte. I remember being in Bangkok, being in Belgium, just everywhere supporting clients. And that experience taught me a lot about the management side, because we had a lot of trade professionals who were more junior, and some of them, it was their first role in trade compliance. So it was really training them, and also being a mentor and understanding like what it's like to, supervise other people and see what they want to do and find work that matches, their skill set so they can grow. But also, I had the experience of working with a customer, an international customer, who was going through a very complex settlement agreement, and what that was like, to support a client through that. So I'm happy I had that experience. And then I decided to join SAP, which I never thought I would work at a technology company before. And also during that time, we were on the heels of this global health pandemic.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, is that really a good time to be looking for a new job, a new role? But sometimes when there's a lot of chaos and a lot of craziness going on, sometimes opportunities present themselves. And I've always been one to want to better myself, get more exposure to other fields. And so I decided to take the role at SAP, and it's been almost 4 years, and I'm so glad that I did, because I was able to bring all of my experiences to bear here at SAP. And it is a global company, and we have a lot to keep track of, and I use all my experiences, and all of it's to say that I think what's made me successful in the roles and in my current role is that, I remember like what it was like, doing the day-to-day work. And I take all that practical experience, so I know like how to implement something. Like I can't just be a lawyer, right? You have to kind of figure out how does that work in the implementation phase? What's practical? Like what can be done? It's more than just issue spotting or saying, here are some problems, but come with some solutions that will work
Yeah.
for the business, right? Like
Yep.
be a business partner and have good communication skills, be proactive. And all of those things I take. And I think, that's what I bring to the role.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, just kind of that experience of, in all of those experiences, a lot of people don't get to experience, doing the grunt work and doing, the licenses, and then also then go to the management side and then different aspects of different industries. So that's an awesome experience. And, definitely I'm excited to hear more about it. So at SAP, you play a crucial role in ensuring compliance with trade laws and market requirements across North and South America. Can you talk a little bit about how you align SAP's functional teams, such as the Cloud Business Group, with the complex landscape of international trade regulations?
Yes, it takes a lot of teamwork. And what I mentioned before about being a business partner, I mean, that's what it is, right? It's more than a lawyer role when you're in-house. It's also how do you be a good business partner? And so a lot of my time is spent on standing calls that I have with product teams, with engineering teams in the cloud business groups, Concur, Fieldglass, Ariba, and just understanding like what do they have coming up in the pipeline? They're always constantly improving products, coming out with new products, making changes, and I need to be there to advise ahead of time, like what kind of controls, we need to have in place to make sure we're compliant with the regulations, right? And so I ask a lot of questions. I'm not a tech person, right? So when I get on these calls, sometimes still, even 4 years in, I have to ask, like, what is this product? What does it do? So
Mhm.
I'm actually teaching them how to work with legal But
Okay.
then, it's also the other way around. Like I need to understand the products, right? And we're always having new products to be able to give the proactive advice. And also the open lines of communication, because things can quickly change. And I don't want the business to, not come to me when they think there may be an issue. I need to be able to, respond and give them the guidance. So there's that. And then there's also just having that trust, right? Having the trust that, I'm going to give them the solid advice and counsel, that I'm going to be there with them to defend our SAP policies and procedures. Because a lot of times, we put in place controls and, customers might, they might wonder why certain things have changed. So I spend a lot of time working with our customer experience and customer support groups to manage escalations that come our way if we put in place new controls. If we change something for regulatory compliance reason, I might need to explain that. So it's coming alongside the business to have like another layer of defense. So it's that too. And also SAP acquires a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And so when we do that, there's this period of like post-merger integration, and that can be challenging given, what kind of company it was. Maybe they didn't have as much control. Maybe they didn't have as much, to do with export controls and sanctions, but now that they're part of SAP, things are going to be a little bit different. So it's kind of bringing them into the fold of, what it means to be part of this global company that does have export control and sanctions risk exposure. So it's that, that patience, the training sometimes, and, enabling business, but managing risk and doing it all in a compliant way.
Yeah. That's, one of those things that you were talking about was innovation and integration. So let's talk about it from a tech side, right? In the context of SAP's industry, how do you balance on one hand the need for technological advancement and efficiency, and then on the other hand, the reliance on manpower? And then are there DEI considerations that factor into this balancing act?
That's a really great question, and so timely given everything that's going on right now with AI revolution, right? So I think that's a great question to dive into. And I'll say that, our board, our SAP board really said it best in one of our end of year meetings, where they said that, it's not a duel between humans and the technology innovation or AI. It's really a duet. I think that really explains things really nicely. Like we need both, right? We need humans, diverse humans, to be able to make sure that AI doesn't perpetuate bias. So DEI considerations are definitely in play. They are definitely important. And SAP is considering all of that as part of our business AI solutions that will be coming out this year. But yeah, we can't have, perpetuation of bias. That means we need diverse humans to be part of the mix so that we can control that. And with this AI revolution, like nobody should be left behind, right? Humans should not be left behind. And this kind of reminds me too of years ago when, in this trade space, the beginnings of automation, of like screening tools and things like that, and how the same conversation was being had. Is this automation going to mean that trade professionals are going to miss out? But really that wasn't the case. What it really meant was that trade professionals had the chance to upskill. They had the chance to work on more high value work, high level work, and leave these automated, mundane, routine things that these tech solutions can do, leave it for that, and then I saw that there was a change and better career journeys for trade professionals. So I think we can try to remember the past and just make sure that we can manage, not making sure there's no bias. And as long as we put those controls in place, AI is going to be here. It's going to change how we live and work. And we have to make sure that we put in place guardrails.
Well, yeah, that's definitely, having the AI is something that, in the legal profession, in the law firms, we're all dealing with it. And like you said, to have diverse professionals, diverse insights to kind of make sure and put guardrails. That's what I've been hearing. Putting guardrails around AI so that you don't have as much bias or biases in the AI. Well, So let's talk a little bit more about some of the export controls work that you do, right?
Mhm.
Michelle, given your experience, and it's extensive experience, right, over 18 years in export controls, can you share your insights on how recent changes in export controls regulations are impacting global trade, especially for a multinational corporation like SAP?
Yes. This business is not for people who don't like change. I mean, there is change, constant change. And, it just goes back to why do export controls and sanctions exist in the first place, right? It
Mhm.
is for the protection of foreign security interests, national security, and every country has, their side of things, right? And so whenever there's going to be like a change in administration, something going on in the world, as we saw with Russia's war on Ukraine coming up on the 2-year anniversary, I mean,
Yeah.
all of that impacts the trade space, right? And so myself covering the Americas, North and South America, I have to monitor and see if any of that is going to affect my region so that I can interpret any new regulations coming out for the business. But I'm also part of a team of legal attorneys who cover the globe. So I have EMEA colleagues, APJ, Greater China, Middle East and Europe, Middle East, North Africa. And so, right now what's going on is last month there was the 12th EU sanctions package that dropped. And so for my EU colleagues, it was really like interpreting what does that mean for SAP? What kind of changes do we need to make? And sometimes, they may be in a specific region that's not my region, but it's all hands on deck when something like that happens. And
Yeah.
so I support as well. And we have to read the regulations and see like what kind of changes do we need to make? Do we need to get new authorizations? Do we need to
Mhm.
stop business? Do we need to wind down business? We have to be proactive with all of that, make the changes internally, advise, our stakeholders, as to what's going on, and then also prepare, customers as to what's going to happen. So there is always constant change in this business, and like I said, it's really a team. You can't do this alone. It requires so many people, and this space touches across so many parts of the company.
Yeah.
You're not just talking about, legal, you're also talking about ethics and compliance, you're talking about partner relationships, you're talking about finance, what about bills? Some got to get paid, like invoices come in, do we pay it? Do we not? So it's like all
Mhm.
kinds of things that cascade throughout the business that myself and my team that we're involved in. Mhm.
And so you were talking about, the EU package. Does shifting perception or shifting public perception or developments in foreign policy, like I would say on your side, the North and South Americas, right? So like the recent warming of U.S. sanctions policy towards Venezuela, how does that impact your compliance role at SAP?
Yes, that's a good question. And Venezuela is top of mind for me always.
Yeah.
Like this business, we're always trying to enable more business, right? Figure out where opportunities are. So I have to stay on top of what's going on in Venezuela. And also my sales colleagues will come and ask me. They'll say,
Yeah.
"Oh, would something change? What does that mean for us?" So I'm always monitoring Venezuela. And I know just a couple months ago, there was the recent warming in October. OFAC had announced that certain activities that were prohibited would now become allowed. But that really was focusing on the oil and gas sector, mining
Yep.
and bonds.
Mhm.
And so it didn't really touch our software and technology sector, but I still have to know what's going on because, we just need to make sure that we're aware of everything that's going on with Venezuela. And still, there is the prohibition to do work with the government of Venezuela and
Mhm.
also any entity that's owner control 50% or more. And so we rely on our screening tools. SAP runs on SAP, so we use SAP GTS. We use other automation tools to let us know, like, if we're going to do business with somebody, are they restricted or not? Like, can we do it or not? We are a compliant company, so we're going to follow the law. But yeah, it's always making sure that I'm on top of any changes in my region, but also throughout the world too. Mhm.
So talking about screening tools, recently SAP has strategically moved towards cloud-based services, particularly with the rise of SAP offering. Do these cloud-based services include export control and screening sanctions tools?
Yes. So the Rise with SAP program, that's our move to the cloud. We
Hmm.
still offer on-prem solutions because not every customer is ready to move to the cloud.
Okay.
So we still offer other solutions, but the flagship product for screening at SAP is SAP GTS Global Trade Services, and that product is cloud-based, and you can get it as part of your cloud subscription. But we still offer other standalone tools. There's also the watch list screening that you can use as part of the S/4HANA program. There's other ways to manage trade compliance, but SAP
Hmm.
GTS is the flagship. It's what's used for cross-border compliance and trade management. The other tools can help with classification. So it's really dependent on like what your business is and what your business needs are. When I had my consulting hat on and we used
Yeah.
to walk through all the different automation tools out there, it just really depends on what the business is, doing, what kind of resources you have, what's your budget, do you have how many people you have,
Yep.
because it's not just about bringing a technology. You have to have people to be able to manage that technology too. So I'm glad that SAP still has, on-prem and offers the cloud as well.
So speaking about budget and those types of things, like in the screening space, do you have any insights as to how platforms can balance compliance with accessibility and inclusivity concerns?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. Accessibility is something that is a priority at SAP. I
Hmm.
actually was just reading something last year where our team made it a priority and basically said that, we are going to make sure that all of our SAP products are accessible, meaning that, people with disabilities should be able to use our products and have the same experience as anyone else. So I was actually really happy to see that there are teams within SAP who are building in accessibility at the design phase. Uh, there were some different forums with customers, and they learned that the accessibility was breaking down at the beginning, at the design
Mm.
phase. And so SAP engineers got together and they actually created, and it's publicly available to anybody, a design tools handbook on how to make products more accessible. So I was actually really happy to see that. And also, I'll say that it's not just making our products accessible for customers and people who are using our solutions, but it's also for our employees.
Mm.
Another part of my role is to manage our strategic global trade enablement role-based trainings for
Okay.
functional groups. So over the past couple of years, myself along with my team, we've created trainings for pre-sales, sales, business development, marketing colleagues, HR colleagues, and our software developers and IT services folks. And so as part of that, I had actually never created content to this level. I've done trainings before, but going through SAP's process for how to roll out global trainings, because these are taken by 10,000, 20,000 people.
Hmm.
And so accessibility was actually a part of the roadmap journey. And so I was like, okay, well, what do I need to do as part of accessibility? There was a point of contact. I had to send, my content over with all of the graphics and voiceover. And there was a review, and they said, okay, well, these colors you need to change, you need to make sure they're screen readers, closed captioning. I mean, it's
Okay.
just for our employees. So, accessibility is really taken very seriously. And I'm happy, I was happy to learn, and also happy to adjust the training to meet the needs of, our diverse employees, diverse disability and neurodiverse employees.
Oh, wow. I mean that's insightful, thinking about it from not only just the customer, but also from your employee standpoint.
Mhm.
That is something. Um, let's talk a little bit about some of the DEI stuff that you're doing, with Syracuse University. You're a founding member of the Inclusion Network at your alma mater, Syracuse University, where you studied law. Can you share more about the motivation to help found this network and how this experience has informed or influenced your approach to DEI within the field of international trade? And then
Yes.
additionally, how do you see initiatives like this as contributing to a more inclusive and diverse professional landscape, particularly in the legal and trade spaces?
Thanks for asking that question. Yes, I actually joined Syracuse University, the Alumni Association Board of Directors, about 2016, 2017. And when I did that, I really had an intention to figure out how I could support diverse law students.
Mhm.
I graduated in 2005, but I didn't really get give back as I wanted to over the years. So I was really looking for a way that I could give back and be there to support diverse law students. And so when I joined the board of directors, one of the committees that I had envisioned was having an inclusion network. And thankfully, there were other alumni who also, had the same kind of goals. And so together we created the inclusion network, and it was really to be able to serve diverse law students and to come alongside diverse law students as law alumni and just kind of share our experiences, offer support, offer career guidance. A lot of us are the first attorneys in our family.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of them are as well. And it's nice to have somebody else who looks like you, who's had similar experiences as you, and, to be able to share experiences together. So I'm so glad that we created that inclusion network, and it came at such a good time because, when 2020 happened and the pandemic and the racial awakening and everything that came with that, it really served as a safe space for diverse law students and alumni to come together. We hosted a lot of roundtables, had a lot of Zoom happy hours, and, just was able to share, what's going on, because some of us, might be in spaces where we can't really share, and we don't have somebody to share with.
Yeah.
And so that was a safe space. And also coming alongside the students as they prepared for the bar exam. I mean, can you imagine the bar exam during the pandemic and virtual and all of the, all of the structures of support were not there. It's just completely different. And so the Inclusion Network was there to support the students. We sent, little care packages and supplies and gave advice. And I really am happy that we were able to do that, and that inclusion network is there. But I also wanted to give exposure to this field of export controls and trade sanctions because, when I was a law student, I didn't know this career practice existed. Okay. I didn't know anything about this until after I graduated from law school, was in the working world and was doing government contracts, and then stumbled upon export control regulations. Right. So I just think it would be nice for people to know that this is a viable career path. I mean, I've been doing this for 18 years. You very successful yourself. And I just want to have other students to see, what are the possibilities? There are so many ways that you can practice law. And so at my law school, I often sit on panels and talk about, what do I do day to day? How did I fall into this kind of work? Because with people my age, that's kind of how it happened. It just kind of like fell into it.
Yep.
So I like to give exposure, and I do want to see more people of color in this space. I co-wrote an article that was published by the Washington Lawyer with another female diverse woman of color who's in this space, and we were basically doing like a call to action, like, if you're out there, we want to connect with you. And we were able to connect with another woman of color who's in this space. And so I'm really on a mission to try to find people, bring them to this space, find others like me, especially senior leaders, because I don't really see that in our space. There's you, but there's only like a handful, so it'd be nice to find all of us so we can support each other.
Definitely. I mean, and then, like you said, I mean, this space is, it's a thriving space, right? And it's dynamic, it's interesting, and just trying to let people know that, hey, this exists and you can do it, right? Like that's another thing, when you start seeing yourself, you've seen other people doing it, then, you may be inspired or to be encouraged to keep going, right? So I appreciate you coming on this, on the podcast, Michelle, because I mean, people don't have that experience, and you going from, doing the work, Big Four, like all of these types of experiences, it shows that you can go to all of these industries and different industries and be successful. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing that experience, and also with your alumni network at Syracuse.
Thank you, Derick. And I really appreciate you saying that. But I also want to just say for everybody here who's listening that, you are a great example too. I mean, there's a lot of people who say they want to do something and help and bring awareness to this space, especially to diverse populations, but you're actually doing it. This podcast is an example. Your work with Howard, with endowing the scholarship for people to go into this space.
Thank you.
That is very significant. And I just applaud you.
Thank you.
And I'm just so happy that our paths have crossed.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And there's more to come, you know what I mean? And there's, we have a moot court competition that's coming up there are going to be several more careers and trade type of programs that are going to be, through different types of organizations. So I am excited for what, the future of international trade and what the International Trade Bar will look like, in the future. Well, I guess when we're talking about DEI right now, let's talk about SAP and DEI, right? So, how does SAP ensure that its DEI strategies effectively reflect its practices and policies, especially when dealing with diverse markets and cultures across the globe?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I will say that our VP for D&I for North America, she has a saying, and it's D&I is the DNA at SAP.
Okay.
And that explains it, really. It's that it's not separate. DEI is not separate. It's part of our business. It's part of our business mission. It's part of our business leadership values and how we run behaviors, such as build bridges, not silos, tell it like it is, stay curious. These are all the foundations of SAP, and it all goes back to DEI. We make data-driven decisions. I know that the global D&I office, they always say, DEI is not just global HR or HR professionals who manage that. It's everybody's responsibility. And you see it as part of our inclusive hiring practices when we onboard people and recruit. There's standards. You have to have inclusive interviews. You have to get an inclusive slate. Even your job requisition, the language that you use needs to be inclusive. Because there's research that shows if you use certain words, it's not targeting maybe the population that you want. So you need to look at that. And then there's also metrics being used for different teams, and based on performance, there's different recognition. So I've seen that. And I'll also give an example of when I first joined SAP, joining out of pandemic, everybody was working from home, got my laptop in the mail. And, I was like, okay, how do I build relationships with people? Because my team was global. Everybody was everywhere. And at the time I was living in the DC area. And so the first thing I thought of was, let me just find out who isn't managing DEI. Let me just reach out to them, because I wanted to get involved in employee network groups. I wanted to find people who cared about the things I cared about. And so I sent her an email, and the next thing I know, we are on a phone call for like an hour. And then she invites me to join NADIC, which is the North America Diversity Inclusion Council that they have to look at all these different areas of DEI and how can we make sure that, our company values DEI, builds it into everything, because you're right, we're global. There's different perceptions on what DEI is and what people want to talk about when it comes to DEI. Because in other parts of the world, they're very comfortable with talking about age and abilities versus race and ethnicity. And we're on a journey together. SAP is on a journey together. We're one SAP. It's a journey, it's not a destination. We got a long way to go, but we have a lot of great people, and we have put in place policies and procedures to make sure that we focus on DEI. And that's really reflected in the recognition that we've received. Last year there was about 52 awards in the DEI space. And one of the ones that stands out to me is it was like a 42% external hiring for women, which was like an all-time record. Wow. So I think that we are moving in the right place. I think our board cares about it. We have good people leading, and so, we just have to keep moving in the right direction.
Michelle, thank you for this. Thank you for joining us and providing your valuable insights into the world of international trade compliance and DEI strategies. Michelle, I look forward to seeing you in your continued impact on, just diverse professionals, the international trade space, economic sanctions, export controls. And I look forward to working with you and collaborating with you in the future. Take care.
Thank you so much, Derick. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.